All right, it is time. It is Wednesday. It is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It is office hours here on the Academy. Hey, Andrew, how are things?
Hey, not too bad. As always, Wednesday afternoon, I'm feeling good about being most of the way through this week. It's been a long one, but it's going well. How about yourself?
All right, I'll take 60% every week.
That's
That
right.
means, yeah, I'm happy. All right, so what's going on in the systems management space?
So, a couple of things. Fairly light week in terms of what I've come across, if you want to share my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So first things first, we got our monthly Intune service release. A couple of things that I noticed there. Sorry, I feel a sneeze coming on, so I'm trying to fight it off. um, some improvements with Endpoint Privilege Manager on ARM64 devices, so that's cool. That's one thing that I know we've been paying attention to, Johan. We get some questions about ARM64 here and there, and it's been an interesting topic for us, I think, too. But any improvements that we see there is a good thing. Some new
Seems like they have a hard time deciding on the name for it.
I noticed that. Is it privilege manager? Is it protection manager? I don't know. So we'll just stick with EPM. um, some new settings catalog for Apple, and then also new settings for the Windows lapse policy. So, as I mentioned last week, I had a presentation up at a user group in Twin Cities last week, and lapse was one of the things that we talked about. So there are new settings available for automated account management, passphrase length, things like that. Um, the interesting thing is, though, that I'm still waiting for is you could do these with custom CSPs already. What I really am hoping we get sooner rather than later is seeing them added to the settings catalog. Because if I go in here to my endpoint security section and account protection and go to create a new lapse policy, so let's just call this test because I just want to show you here. If we go in here and check password complexity, I'm still not seeing the passphrase options here. Um, that's going to be a big win, I think, once we get those new options here, as well as the ability to manage that automatic account creation. Of course, all of these settings are also only for Windows 11 24H2 at the moment, as it relates to Intune. But like I said, this is really what I'm waiting for. I like things easy. I've really come to appreciate the simplicity of having the settings catalog available. It's much more like managing things in a group policy UI to me. And I don't like the risk of fat fingering a custom CSP. How about you, Johan?
Nope.
It's not my idea of a good time. Um, the last thing that I wanted to mention here on the 2503 release is that for Mac OS, at least now, you can, Mac OS and iOS, you can set devices to stay on the latest OS version using DDM, which we talked about a little bit a couple of weeks ago, coming off of the technical takeoff event. DDM is just a way to ensure that devices stay configured in the way that you have expected them to be configured, essentially. And with this new option, you can just say, hey, I want my Apple devices to be set at this at the latest OS version, whatever's available. Here's the delay. So say Apple releases a new point version today, but we want to be able to wait a week or so. We can set that in there, and then we can set install time. So more options, a little bit more control and flexibility around how we're dealing with software updates on our Apple devices. I know a lot of folks, Johan and I say we're mostly focused on the Windows side, but I've seen a lot of folks focusing on the Apple side that are very excited about this update. So I wanted to point that out as well. And then I also came across a blog post that I was reading. I didn't get through it all the way before we hopped on here, unfortunately. But Rudy did a post around ESP, the enrollment status page, and Autopilot, and how this can get stuck or fail to finish during the user ESP during Autopilot. So there's some nice troubleshooting steps here. And of course, as Rudy often does, talks through some of the internals on how these things actually work and how you might be affected by some of these issues. So I wanted to put this out there as well. But that is that's really what I had on my list for this week.
All right, then let me go ahead and share my screen then.
All right.
So I couldn't quite let go of the naming here in the what's new that you shared earlier. And it looks actually like they got both names wrong.
It's awesome.
Which is pretty impressive. As far as I'm concerned, it's endpoint privilege management, but there is indeed a role that is the endpoint privilege manager. But we believe it's this particular feature they are announcing the ARM support for, no matter what that happened to say there on the text. But I'm pretty sure the community can enlighten us if we should be too far off on that one. But yeah, that's my little note on that. Now, I did stumble across a blog post regarding PSADT and ServiceUI. As most of you probably know, ServiceUI is a component from Microsoft Deployment Toolkit that you can use to prompt for information either during an Intune application deployment or as well as a ConfigMgr task sequence that normally will not allow for interaction at all, but using this little component, you can. And depending on how you launch it and which process you attach it to, it may not be so happy. For example, if you try to launch it with a TS Progress UI process and that process doesn't happen to be running, well, then it's going to fail. So here was a little blog post that shows a nice little workaround to launch it together with a different process, in this case, the Explorer XC process. So I figured that could be helpful for folks using the PSADT. Then I spent some time this weekend working on a blog post restarting a post or a question that we got on our community. So we have up on our academy here, if I go to Hans here on my dashboard, we have this community where you can ask questions. Of course, we have some events and whatnot that we've been running here and there. But long story short, we got a question on how to do this. So I put together a blog post on how to install the RSAT tools for Windows 11 completely offline. So you simply download the ISO that Microsoft have for language edits optional features for Windows 11, extract it to a folder, and then a little bit of PowerShell to do different operations. In this case here, since the question was around adding the AD tools only, I added a line on how to do that. But as you can see here, this is how you install all of them. And this is how you simply list if they are available. So fairly straightforward. I tested on a machine that did not have internet access at all. I just took a VM and disconnected it from the internet, and it worked beautifully, and the components were added. So quick little tip there. Then another thing we've been covering in our trainings lately has been regarding Black Lotus mitigations, because that process is kind of painful. But Gary just announced that he and Mr. Mike Terrell, they're often lurking here on the office hours from time to time at least, they will be doing a session on MMS this year. So if you're going to MMS in Minneapolis in May, I would highly recommend to attend this session. As you can see here, this session covers not just the ConfigMgr implementation, but also running a remediation script out of Intune to do this mitigation. This is not something that's built into the platform. This is something that Gary and Mike put together here for that session. So hoping that it will be released to the community after MMS. They usually do, and I will certainly do my best to convince them to do so if I have the chance. But yeah, figured it was worth mentioning. A good session to attend to. Finally, Microsoft announced AI agents for Intune. Not available yet in my tenant. I'm assuming that's for later this year. Yeah, launching in May, it says, public preview. But long story short, once this feature gets released, you will have the ability in Intune to basically work with those agents there. I don't know if this will require the Microsoft security Copilot or not, but I'm assuming time will tell for that. I'm hoping it won't, because that one is extremely costly at the moment. A couple of $1,000s just for a single compute unit, which is a little bit too heavy, I think, price-wise, but we'll see. The blog post is out there. I figured it was worth mentioning it. So some nice weekend read here.
Excellent.
That was all I had made a note of. Do we have any questions?
We do. So the first one here was a little bit of a surprise to me, and I was just doing a little bit of searching while you were talking. Have you guys seen MS removing the feature update profile for GCC customers? There are several reports of this over on the Intune subreddit. Just pulling it without warning seems crazy at a critical time leading up to Windows 10 end of life. And I had not heard about that, but went on to the Intune subreddit here, and sure enough, I'm seeing the posts about this, and I'm seeing that Microsoft has updated the feature update policy documentation to show it is not supported with GCC or GCC High. So that's news.
Wait a minute. Not supported.
Not supported, correct. And it seems like it was supported and they have pulled it. So actually, if you want to share my screen, Johan, I can show the documentation in the post that I found.
Wow, that was incredibly interesting.
Yeah. So basically came across this post, and as mentioned here in the chat, I think there are several posts about it, but basically started seeing some messages that creating feature update policies require specific licenses and everything. And then according to this poster, they talked to Microsoft and says that these features are no longer supported, and their documentation was updated to reflect that. So if we click on this link here and scroll down, sure enough, feature is not supported with GCC and GCC High.
I mean, who needs to upgrade to Windows 11 now?
It's such a great question. Just like everybody, right?
That would be pretty much everybody. But wait a minute, you can just use a ConfigMgr to do that. Except you've been told not to use that anymore for upgrades either. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
Well, there might be. I have seen some workarounds for that. Johan Markham was kind to share some of the stuff they've been working on. See if I can find that real quick. Yes, he led me into the idea. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
So since Microsoft apparently removed the feature update capability for GCC and GCC High, which sound to me like an incredibly bad idea, considering the timing and everything, it's not the only way to run feature updates. You can run them as a remediation script also. And I have seen a few customers doing that. So basically calling either SetupXE itself as part of an application, or call the Windows 11 installation assistant XE to run the installation. So this is a script I stumbled across that were based on a script I got from John Markham, but it basically calls the setup through this one, and that can be run, of course, directly on the device as part of a remediation script. Even a platform script should probably work as well. So maybe that. But for everybody else, I mean, the feature updates policy is what you would use if you have access to it. And we covered last Wednesday some of the resources around it. We covered the feature update controller from Nikolai Anderson, if I can spell. This one here, that gives you more control over that policy, but basically creating the folder structure and everything related to setup ConfigMgr and others. I had the same blogged here, a similar solution. But in all fairness, even though I did put my heart into these scripts that I shared here, Nikolai is, of course, always one level above, not just doing this, but also adding in an entire structure for plugins and modules and whatnot to make the process easier. So that would be a starting point for that. All right.
Excellent suggestions. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we've got a question from Andre over on YouTube. Have you heard how ESU, the extended security updates for Windows 10 licenses, will be deployed? We only want a portion of our Windows 10 systems to receive it. So I don't know if you've dealt with them in the past, Johan. As far as I understand, there's sort of a... what's the term I'm looking for? I don't know that they're actually assigned to anything. But effectively, you need to purchase. This is my understanding, so please talk to your licensing people at Microsoft. Do not take Andrew's word for it. It's my understanding that you purchase per device, and then those devices can still be updated. And then it is your responsibility to ensure that you are not, if you, say, purchase 50 licenses, that you're not updating 100 Windows 10 devices. But I don't know that there's an actual technical assignment of that license. Are you aware of anything, Johan?
Nothing I have stumbled across. I don't have any customers at the moment that have been using the extended anything, really. Okay. So I don't know.
But you'd back me up on talk to your licensing person for that.
Yes, always.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So Matthew's got a question here. So he says that he believes you said in the past you don't like using application groups in a task sequence. So how would you recommend installing numerous applications in a sequence?
Basically, as providing a variable list to the sequence, because then the sequence doesn't reference them directly, and it will speed up that initial, when the sequence starts and it tries to figure out if every package it needs is existing on a distribution point and stuff like that. Of course, it's nice with that validation, but it can take quite some time if you have like 100 plus packages. So using dynamic lists is an elegant solution. A lot of folks have been using roles in the past to achieve stuff like that. So either they prompt for a role selection when they start the deployment, or they have some sort of backend database where they define the role, or they have the role defined on the collection. So they have like a marketing collection. And if you're part of marketing, you're supposed to have these 17 applications. And it's just a variable list, because if you open up one of my sequences here, let's see. wrong server, this server. And pick one of my say this one. Good old Windows 10 sequence goes a long way. If you don't have too many apps, there's absolutely no problem. Just adding a step with either a single software package or a single application here. You can add in, of course, multiple applications into that list, but they can also have a variable to them. So instead of hard coding the names in here, you can say, I like to use a variable and I call it apps. And then it's just a numbered sequence from that on. Important note here is that the ConfigMgr team, for some odd reason, decided to use a 2-digit number for variables for applications, but a 3-digit number for packages. That's why we often saw in the MDT integration scripts that it was a script that basically converted 3 digits down to 2 digits if needed. But that would be a better option if you have tons of different applications that you need to have a sequence to deploy. So rather than hard coding them in, just feed a list. Or you can even have, in the sequence itself, you can build dynamic lists here and just have the next step use them. So of course that step would have to be before. So as long as that list is generated somehow, the sequence don't care how it is created. If those variables exist, it will use it. So that will be my recommendation there. Rare exception being offline media, because then they need to know if you're going to put it on a USB stick or something like that.
All right, great stuff. Clive is asking, has anyone tried the Windows 10 upgrade to Windows 11 using Intune?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that goes back to what we just showcased earlier. Do recommend to take a look at this one here. That video is, by the way, available from Reactor now, Microsoft Reactor. This was from my Ignite session, but we did a longer recording after the fact. Of course, you're more than welcome to join any of our trainings as well on the topic. But yes, it is highly doable. A lot of organizations are doing it. Nikolai, that I was on a call with just the other week here, they basically used this to upgrade close to 100,000 devices using Intune. So yes, it works. It's a bit of work to get it to work reliably. Just creating a feature update policy and hope for the best. No, you need to have a little bit more control and customizations to it, but it's not that hard to do. It just needs to be done.
Yep, well said. Agreed. I've had pretty good experience doing that upgrade through Intune. It's pretty straightforward.
All right.
So we got a question over here on YouTube. How do I have my WIM? I think this is referring to specifically an operating system install of Windows in SCCM updated. If I'm not wrong, it's not doing the scheduled updates anymore, or did I miss something?
I mean, long story short, Microsoft added in years ago the ability in ConfigMgr to, when you have images, to basically do a right click and for like a Windows 10 image, for example, I have updates for those available. And it will, after a week, it will show me what's available, and I can tell it to inject that to that image if I do have any updates. Either it's really slow or I happen to not have any at the moment, but it does say loading. So let's see here, give it a minute or 5 and see if it actually loads something. No, wait a minute. I don't have it synced on that server. I have it synced on this server. Turn out you actually need to have the updates downloaded for them to, show up.
That's important.
see if that one works a little bit better. So this requires that you have, synchronized the update category in your software update point. But I believe I had for this one. Let's see. It is not that important if they load or not. I was just hoping they would. I can show you, but maybe it decided not to. It's Wednesday after all. The reason I'm saying it's not interested is because you should basically do this and never ever use this feature ever. The implementation is so bad. It is way better to leverage. Okay, now they're finally loaded. So now I can say cross and skip it. Don't do this. It's a bad implementation. It's way better to update your media or download a new media from Microsoft and import that media into ConfigMgr every month. Some of the organizations we work with, they have done an approach like this where they have an even and odd. And that basically means if the month is even, if the month is odd. So January would be obviously an odd month, March would be an odd month. And they just replace that Vim file and they update the DP of the other month. So if I'm currently deploying February image out there and it's time to replace it with the March one, I will update this one. Because if you have a large environment, it can take a good number of hours, days to get a new image out there. And while it's being distributed, you break the deployment. So by leveraging two images and just flip-flop in between them, you can always update the one that you're currently not using. And then you would just go into the sequence and flip it, because that is instant. The sequence is just the policy. So update the media prior to add it. Don't use the scheduled update features. It's no good. There are other solutions out there. OSD builders seem to be currently a bit broken in terms of updating, but you can definitely download updates themselves and just inject them, PowerShell, or download the latest media from Microsoft itself. I just downloaded the March builds that was available. Was it last office hours we saw them?
Yep.
Yeah, so they are available now. So use those instead.
Yeah, that's become so much easier. And I believe somebody out there on GitHub has a PowerShell script to pull the whim out of those that makes it even easier.
Yeah, there is always one idiot out there that... yeah, a few.
I was wondering, I thought I put the 2025 one up there, and there's confirmation. Yes. Yeah, downloading the media and then adding these scripts onto it, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to rebuild. For organizations that can just get away with the thin image, I love moving to this.
I mean, if we would really go above and beyond, you can extend that script to also upload it to ConfigMgr and import it and update the DPs for it and send you an email when it's done.
It's not bad.
Automation. I love it.
That's right. All right. Matthew just had a follow-up comment on the installing applications with the sequences. He's taking a look at using groups in a drop-down list with TSGui.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that was one of the examples we showcased when we did our MDT replacement webinar. Yep. This one here. So if you want to see how that looks like, you can check out that video. We talked about a couple different front ends available, and that was one of them. It's been around for quite some time.
It was a fun session.
It was. All right. Anything else? Still have 29 minutes.
yeah.
Well, while we're waiting for questions, we have this upcoming mini course, community course, free to attend. Doesn't say that it's free because I already enrolled into it, but if I open up an incognito browser, the price is just right for this one. So Kent Ageland and Morten is going to present this session. This is a longer version of the one they did for the Nordic Virtual Summit. But if you didn't go up at 2 a.m. to listen to that one, this is a chance to have it on a more reasonable time, I'll say. 9 a.m. Central Time, which means that people both in Europe and in the US have a fighting chance to be able to see it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Next week. Yep.
Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe you will be there.
I will. I'm very much looking forward to this. Did have a follow-up question here on the application deployment stuff. What would work better for this, TSGui or UI++?
Both will work just fine, as many of the other front ends that are out there. Again, we showcased a couple of them in that session. Right now, I'm not too worried about front ends. That still depends on VBScript, because VBScript is going to be around until at least 2027 anyway. But sure enough, if you have a PowerShell-driven front end that works already for you, or you find one that works, I would recommend using that one.
Yeah.
Because A, it's a better scripting language. 2, it's not very likely to go out of support in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, I thought I had something clever coming to mind there, but nope, let's just stick with that.
But it's funny, PowerShell was released in 2006.
Yeah.
So that means that next year we get to celebrate 20-year anniversary.
That's
or birthday,
amazing.
whatever you say. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I suppose it would be a birthday in this case.
Yeah.
And man, PowerShell has made things so much easier for us Windows admins in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. PowerShell is king.
That's right. I agree. Got another question coming in. Any thoughts on things to clean up on the config manager side once updates are fully moved to Intune and Windows Update for Business? Deployments, software update deployments. If you don't need client updates coming down anymore, unselect them from your synchronization options.
Clean up the ConfigMgr client cache for software update packages. There's probably no point of keeping them around any longer.
Clean up your client settings if they're still set to have software updates configured. But you probably already did that as part of your transition. Just something to verify.
Oh yeah, otherwise the Intune update won't come down. So yep.
But yeah, those are some of the things off the top of my head for sure. Nice to get that space back once you're no longer syncing and downloading those updates anymore. ADRs, you might need to adjust those as well. So, all right. Is there any info on if Microsoft is going to bring PowerShell 7 as native and replace PowerShell 5 or Windows PowerShell?
I haven't heard anything related to that, and considering there are so many scripts out there still, infrastructure scripts primarily, that requires Windows PowerShell 5, I doubt it will be switched out anytime soon, but I haven't heard anything. It's just a guess.
Yep. All right. Jamie's asking, do you think we can push Microsoft to use an updated ODJ connector with WebView 2 as it's still using legacy IE components?
No, I don't think so. Microsoft has been very clear about not making any further investments to basically the hybrid autopilot joint scenario. The only thing they have done in recent years is to emphasize more on not using it. That's pretty much the only update that has been there. They updated their documentation to say, don't do this. So I wouldn't bet my money on that happening.
All right. See, Mr. Niehaus is joining us here over on LinkedIn. He did have a comment on the PowerShell support. Unlikely that PowerShell 7 will be added to Windows due to the mismatch in the support lifecycle between PowerShell and Windows. Windows is stuck with 5.1. Makes sense. Yep. Thanks for the addition there, Michael.
Yeah, appreciate that. So that means I was almost right.
That's right.
Yay.
Perfect.
I'll take a win when I get it.
That's right. Of course, you have to. All right. That's a great question here around Connected Cache. How is Connected Cache doing? It's still in preview. So standalone Connected Cache, I believe. It's still in preview, but does it work reliably?
In my testing so far, absolutely yes. Had really good success with it. If you're interested in a guide for it, this is how you set it up. A little script you run to prepare the devices. You need to make sure you have a container or something that can host a container. In this case, I was still using a Windows 11 box, but it doesn't have to be Windows 11. But yeah, in my testing so far, we've been very happy with it. Easy to set up, quick to get content in, and some decent reporting available up in Azure for it.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
And when I spoke with Andy Rivas last MMS, they targeted June this year for general availability. So by the end of their fiscal year or Microsoft fiscal year. So hoping that's still on track. I haven't seen anything otherwise, but so far it's been working good.
All right. Got a question here from Matt over on YouTube. Are there any community tools you'd recommend for automating the migration of around 150 SCCM applications to Intune?
I mean, there are two ways to get to that. Either you script something yourself, or you borrow what Ben Whitmore has been together so far, or you find a third-party vendor that offer that as a service. I know there are a few out there that can help convert those packages, but then there's usually a fee per package that you have to pay, which is, it's not really that complicated in my opinion to convert those applications. But do you happen to have the link to Ben's project?
I do. I just pulled it up.
Oh, there you go. Let me share your screen then.
All right. So looks a little bit like that. A little bit of PowerShell. And basically allows you to query the ConfigMgr applications that you have in ConfigMgr, select the ones that you want to have zipped up and the associated Win32 apps created on the Intune side. To put it simply.
The last time I looked at this script, it didn't upload them to Intune at that point. I'm not sure if it does that now. I know Ben was working on some updates earlier this year for it.
Yeah.
It does look like it's uploading it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he updated it quite a bit earlier in January, I think. So here's the nice, I'm glad that this is right here in the README. So this is kind of the nice exactly what happens. Downloads the content essentially, gets your applications that you've selected in that UI that I showed there at the beginning, and then builds out those Win32 apps for you, uploads them to Intune, and there you go. And some good logging that he's got added in there as well. So I will make sure to share this evening.
That sounds good.
All right. Any recommendations on tools to use for signing PowerShell scripts? For signing PowerShell scripts.
I use the regular sign tool, the SDK components, and a PowerShell script to drive them. That works. I did wrote up a post back in the days. Let's see. I was using it to sign drivers with it at the time, but I was just running the sign tool exe with a 4 billion command line switches to it. And
did you have something that you wanted to share?
Yes, sir. You're saying I should actually share my screen?
That would be
not
helpful.
Just talking about it. Yeah, so this was the one I was referring to. That's one way of dealing with it. And this was an old post that I had, but I did stumble across and use, forgot who wrote it. Let's see. Where did I put that? Sign script with code sign insert. That kind of sounds like.
Think so. It's a pretty clever name.
Yeah. So this just picks a script to sign, and this one-liner signs it with my sign insert. So this was a self-sign cert I was using, and I was having another script to create that certificate here, create self-signed code signing certificate. Yeah, that's where I got it from. No, it was somewhere. So this post here takes you through that process. So PowerShell script to generate the cert, and then basically a script to just run it. So if I would open that script here, you can clearly see that it does not have a signature at all, right? It's gone. If I use this one to get the cert, just to show you I do have a certificate here, and then point out the script and then run the signing and open up the same script again, I will now have a signature block in the end. So
very nice.
PowerShell to do PowerShell things.
Love it.
Wonder who wrote that. Was it Miracle?
Oh, no, it was Thomas. It was right
Thomas?
under the. There it is. Just right under the screenshot.
Right under. Yes, there we go. Yes. Thank you, Thomas.
All right. Question with Hyper-V. How do you reset a VM so that during a PXE boot, it will pick up a task sequence offered to the unknown computers collection? I've been having to delete the VM and recreate it.
No, so there is no need to recreate the VM, but the trick is to make sure when you create the VM to take a checkpoint early after powered on once, so it has a static MAC that doesn't change anymore. But you still need to nuke the unknown object out of ConfigMgr, because if you deploy it once, it becomes a known, and therefore will not see deployments for unknown devices. So that's one way of doing it. Just have a script that deletes the unknown object. You can run it just before you start the virtual machine, or you can have a script that deletes the unknown object and then start the virtual machine and have that as a process. Another option is to not use unknown computers at all, that collection. And like when we do mass deployment testing, oh yes, I want to exit and lose my changes. We basically have fairly large collections. This one contains 400 devices. We re-image them like over and over and over again for testing purposes. And this one has required deployments to it. And then I don't have to do anything. It's just, yeah. So few different options available. But just make sure that that VM doesn't change its MAC address, because that obviously breaks a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. Got another question over here on YouTube on a fully native Entra joined Windows 11 24H2 device. I'm getting a notice to sign into your work or school account to verify your info, which is fixed by running the Microsoft sign-in service. Have you run into this before? Nothing. So I've seen the sign in with your work or school account to verify your info many, 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 many times in various scenarios. Nothing that I've come across that seemed to be an issue fixed by the sign-in service, though. Anything you've seen, Johan?
No, sir, have not.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that where, a refresh token is expired, you just need to sign in again, things like that. But in most cases, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, simply resolved by signing in again.
Oh, I have to find some reports from last year. Nothing that is recent.
No, same. Nothing that specific, at least.
Nope. Sorry about that. Don't have any good answer on that one.
All right. Is there a way or a script to update store apps during OSD, specifically during WinPE and not the full OS?
Not that I have seen. I mean, there are ways to easily force an update when it's in full Windows, but nothing. I haven't seen anything for WinPE. It's all about getting those applications in a state that it could be applied, but I haven't seen any. Yeah, I saw the follow-up comment regarding telling David to include that in his OSD cloud solution. Yeah, that would be nice. Probably even the OSD builder one.
Yeah.
To inject those, but I don't know if it's possible. I haven't seen it.
Oh, same. And I just a little bit of searching right now. I wasn't able to come up with anything.
It would be nice to be able to have, when Microsoft generates new media, if they actually made sure that even those applications were fully updated, which they currently don't. But I remember using script like this when we were basically doing benchmark testing on how much stuff that is being downloaded in different versions of Windows 11 and Windows 10. I just had a PowerShell script that I ran that first figured out, okay, what is the current update count at the moment, and then I would force that method to scan for updates. I will wait an hour and I'll report again. So that's where we figured out how many components that are being updated in which time period, and yeah, we just ran this multiple times on devices.
What about, there's a follow-up question here. What about during Autopilot pre-provisioning?
I haven't tried to run this script during that phase, but this can take quite some time. When we were doing the testing that I blogged about over at the 2 Punt blog a couple of, well, I guess it was last year, this has been one of the more popular posts, lies damn lies and statistics, but DO by the numbers. 2 years ago, 2023, November. But anyway, we did a bunch of testing for how the different settings affect the download and download times and peering efficiency and whatnot. And what we found is that we often had to run it completely in a 4-hour test window to be like really reliable of getting all the components updated. And that makes it pretty much useless for any sort of autopilot scenario, because you don't run something for 4 hours in autopilot.
No, not the greatest of ideas.
No, and all of these updates are done in the background. You don't see them unless you really look for them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to open up the store application, or you have to go into the DO log files, etc., to see that it's actually doing stuff. It's invisible to the end user. No reboots, no nothing. So I don't see the harm of having this coming down later and just run in the background. And Windows will do it on its own anyway. It just takes a bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
This was just that since we did so many testings, I want to get sure to get most of those done in a fairly quick state. So I just rerun that script multiple times.
All right. Jamie's asking if we have any examples of Intune global conditions or requirements for an application using the OR logical operators instead of having multiple detections instead of using a PowerShell script and a custom detection.
Yes, we do. If you don't mind, if you guys are using Patch My PC to create applications, you will find that they have mastered the art of having detection scripts for pretty much anything out there. What did I click devices for? I meant to click applications. And I'm not sure what's going on right now, but it's a little bit sluggish to load.
Well, I've got, if you want to pull mine up, I've got a Patch My PC
App up?
application. Yep.
Yeah.
But this is using a PowerShell script. It is doing a lot of the OR logic, to your point, Johan. So let's see, where do I?
Yeah.
Here we've got some ands. We've got a bunch of different comparisons here.
Yeah, the other thing to worth mentioning around the Patch My C script logic, they purposely create them to be as small as possible to generate as little policy as possible or small policy as possible, because there was a time when Intune had a really harsh limit on how big the policy could be that you downloaded. And if you have a lot of apps, and I run into that with only like 600-700 apps, that the policy wouldn't come down anymore. So they are purposely created small, but that make them pretty hard to read.
Yeah.
But you can take this and you can smack it into ChatGPT and say, hey, expand, basically, make it better. And it will usually give you a little bit of better, easy to read scripts, because these works beautiful. They are fantastic logic, but they're just dang hard to read.
So if you were going to have multiple requirements using those OR operators, would you typically just go towards using a custom script and having something that you can write it in such a way that you could reuse it?
It depends. I mean, if there's just a couple of manual rules I need to add to a script that or add to an application that does the job, and I happen to know what they are, I don't see the problem having them. Like if you take some of the apps that the Microsoft Enterprise App Catalog is generating, you will find that those detection methods are rarely a script. They are often just multiple manual rules that has been added. And they are like great for inspiration, I think.
Yeah, and I think to Jamie's point here, a couple of follow-ups. I think that if you're using an OR, you may be stuck with using the PowerShell scripts right as it stands today. Because as you can see, as I'm clicking around here, so let's see, just adding some random detection rules in here. Oh, come on. Yes, that looks good. It's just going to check both of them anyways.
Yeah. I mean, if you do have access to the enterprise catalog for Microsoft and you pick one script that has been creating with it, like this application here, I know it's an older version, but if I go to the properties on that one and take a look at the detection rule they create, you can see that they do put in some basic stuff here. So can also be used for inspiration.
Yep. And I think just to point out what the chat's saying here, I think even when you do that, it's just going to be ands. So all of those must be true if you want the detection method to pass successfully. So I think if you do want to use OR, I think you're stuck with the PowerShell script at this time. Great question.
Yeah, and that took us all the way into the grand final.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And thank you, Andrew, as usual. And we hope to see you again next Wednesday. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Johan. Thanks, everybody.